So glad that you could join us to talk about evaluating post-pandemic educational technology. Before we get too far into the presentation, I wanted to make sure that you are familiar with the Literacy Cooperative, who is sponsoring this professional development. So we do have a whole series of professional development throughout the year for various different constituents. And if you're not already signing people up for Imagination Library or planning to join some of our other Read Across America events, please check that out and join us. So I am joining you today as both the professional development coordinator for the Literacy Cooperative and also a trainer for Mustard Seed Training. So my background is in adult basic education. I've done high school equivalency preparation, worked extensively the past 10 years with integrated education and training, and also religious education. So I know for me, sometimes I need a reminder going back and forth between all these systems, how to, where our reactions are. So if you do feel more comfortable getting on chat or we get into a conversation, multiple people are talking at a time, feel free to use the raise hand to give us a chance to speak one at a time. And if people do respond in chat, Lori is going to be monitoring the chat for us, and feel free to respond as well there. That always makes it a fun time to support each other in that way. We are going to have several chances to share as we go through this exploration. I'm going to start off with a quiz, actually. So you'll get an example of a fun way to use tech for training as we talk about models of program delivery, and then thinking about what tech would be needed for each of those models. How does that relate to your strategic goals? What funding is available? Sounds like some of you have already secured some funding around digital equity and digital literacy, but if not, I want to make sure you're aware of opportunities here in Ohio. And also get us thinking and sharing a little bit about our own needs and experiences with resources that we've been using. The other benefit of joining our program today is I will be available for a follow-up session for you. So if you do want to schedule, you know, a 20 to 30-minute call or video conference to kind of talk further one-on-one about some of the things you heard today, please feel free to follow up with me. That is part of what we're offering. Want to make sure you implement, find something useful out of this for your specific program. So we talked, just as folks were coming in, you had a chance to share a little bit about who you were and your organization. But I thought maybe we could also go around and say there were some folks who weren't here when other folks joined. So if you wouldn't mind sharing again your name, your organization, your role, and the last book that you read. So I would be happy to go first, or if somebody else has is brave to share. So I shared a little bit about my name and organization. I'm in Kent. And the last book that I read, well, I'm still in the middle of reading it, but it's called Time Traders by Andre Norton, who was a librarian in the Cleveland Public Library system and is also considered the dame of the dame of sci-fi from the 20th century. So it's very interesting. Anybody else want to share who you are, your organization, and a book you've read? Yes.
Okay, I'll go. I can't see anybody but you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that video is off
Okay,
usually
yeah,
on
like
this
I
because
can't
it's a
turn my camera
webinar.
on either.
I see.
So,
Yeah, because it's a webinar.
okay, that's okay. Um,
Sorry.
so I'm Tarina Crow, and I am the Aspire Director at Polaris Career Center in Middleburg Heights. And I am currently in the middle of The Inmate by Frida McFadden.
Hmm. Great. And what genre is that?
Um,
Fiction or
kind of like mystery
mm,
thriller.
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
I'll go ahead and go.
Yeah.
My name is Michael Landstrom. I'm an instructional specialist in mathematics at the Western Campus of Tri-C. Um, and right now I'm in the middle of a biography of Grace Hopper, who was a mathematician, Navy person who worked on the first computer systems with the Navy.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you. All right. Who's next?
Marquita Mitchell with Project Learn in Summit County, also an Aspire program. Hi, Tarina. I am currently reading Martin Luther King Jr.'s On Leadership. It's an inspiration and wisdom for challenging times.
Wow. Very timely. Thank you. Donna or Edna, do you want to take a turn to chair? Or you can also pass.
I'll go. I'm Donna Bullis with the Salvation Army in Paynesville, and we have literacy programs from elementary age all the way through adults. We do a lot of English as a second language classes and GED prep, citizenship prep. The current book that I have is called The Incubus Curse, and my niece just wrote it and published it. So I'm
Wow,
reading her book for the first time. So
that is cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right. So now that we know each other a little bit, let's get to know our program delivery models. So we're going to test your knowledge today as we get started about program models. I think as you were sharing, you already, have a sense of what you're currently using. And so this is a Menti. You can join through the device you're on, but you could also join through your phone by using the QR code there, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code for our quiz today. So we're going to have a chance to kind of have a little more fun way to talk through what our program models are and go up against each other. All right, so I'll give you another couple minutes here to get on to Menti. Again, you're just going to menti.com. Has anybody else used a Mentimeter before? It's kind of like Kahoot for adults. Kahoot can also be for adults, I will say, but all right. We got 3 folks in. I'll give you another minute or 2 to get on if you like. The music doesn't start until the questions come up, so we're just gonna have to sing in our own heads. I, for some reason, always have the Jeopardy music in my head if I don't have something else, so but I'll spare you. All right. So anybody else trying to get on and hasn't been successful yet, feel free. Tell me to stop. Otherwise, we're going to move forward. All right. And if you haven't shared yet, you can still jump on. Let's make sure. Uh-oh. Hmm. All right. Assistive tech in a face-to-face class is face-to-face with tech. All right, Dragonite and Tweedo. Uh-oh, we lost somebody. All right, so what is the program model in which teacher and learners are physically separated? We have distance, hybrid, face-to-face with tech, high flex. Distance. All right. Flippy getting up there.
For some reason, it kicked me out. So,
Oh no.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you should be able to rejoin. Were you at on a browser?
I just used the QR code.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's okay. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for the heads up. Ooh, oopsie. Sorry about that. Question 3. What is the program model that mixes in-person and self-paced online learning? Distance, hybrid, face-to-face, high flex. Everybody answers real quick. Yep, there we go. It's hybrid. We know this. Great job. Woohoo. All right, last question. What is the model when students can choose in-person, remote, or self-paced online? Everybody knows this. It's called high flex. Alrighty. All right, so our next question in our quiz here is how much is your program using each model? And you can choose, click on there between never and all the time. So is your program using distance, hybrid, high flex, face-to-face with tech, or face-to-face with no tech? And feel free to, I think some of us have already shared doing distance, doing hybrid. Alrighty. So some folks hybrid, some folks distance. Oh, somebody's doing high flex. Very interesting. And a lot of folks are doing face-to-face with tech and without tech. Great. All right. And again, you can put, if you were booted out, feel free to put your answer in chat if you like. And how much would you prefer your program to use each model? So I know some of you shared you have certain models that you're doing now, but would you like to be trying something else? So a little vote for high flex. All right, interesting. So even though we had before face-to-face with no tech, we still want it there, but maybe a little less than it was, and a lot more of hybrid and some high flex. So this is cool. We will definitely be talking through these models as we go along. That's our next goal. Yay. So I hoped you had fun with Minty. Thank you for joining me on that. So what does this mean in terms of technology? What I have for us here is a Google Doc, which I'm going to copy the link into chat for you so you can join me on that Google Doc. And it is right over here. Whoop. So what technologies support your program model? I'm going to go through each of these options that we just kind of quizzed on and that you said you were interested in, particularly our distance, hybrid, and high flex. And I have a couple examples, but I would really encourage you as we go in here, feel free to hop into this document and add what you use or think you would use for these models. So for distance learning, one resource that I've used that can be integrated into a learning management system is called Edpuzzle. So I use it particularly for YouTube videos of webinars that I've done before or sessions. If you've done distance tutoring sessions or things like that that you want to reuse with another audience, or you can take any YouTube video. It doesn't upload a video from somewhere else that you've created. And Edpuzzle allows you to not only track within the learning management system how far along, but it also allows you to add these points of interaction in there where you can be either testing their knowledge or asking open-ended questions or offering a link to something else. So for distance, that's a great way to maintain your interaction while still allowing that self-paced viewing of the video. Google Drive, of course, we're modeling right now. I would say for me personally, it's my number one collaboration tool. And now that Google Classroom is so common in our K-12 schools, it's also something that a lot of our adults are now familiar with too. But if they're not, it's this is a really the other thing that's great about it is of course free. So you can set things up like this document where anyone can get in and change it for collaboration, or you can send them, things that are just between certain students or just between you and the student. at their own pace. And then the other big distance tech, of course, and this is obviously not anywhere near extensive list, but making sure that both, if you are going to do synchronous distance where you're meeting like we are now, making sure that both sides have that internet connected computer, camera, microphone, speakers. For hybrid and blended, if you don't already have a learning management system, I know that many of you, especially for K-12, you know, that choice is made for you. But I know there's also a lot of literacy programs out there where it's kind of teacher by teacher. And so if you as an administrator or working with the other teachers want to have a low cost but kind of robust LMS to tie your courses together, Moodle is very good for that. It's very adaptive, and it's about, for single course, single person, it's about $120 a year, and they have some really good tutorials as well. So learning management system for that hybrid blending model is going to be really critical, because you definitely, and again, other folks who are doing hybrid and blended, feel free to put in here what tech that you are using. But having that learning management system, from my experience for hybrid, is just critical to be able to give students one login. So if they're in class, there's one login. If they're working from home, it's the same login. And that way they don't have to remember logins for multiple systems. Even if you do give them access to other systems, everything should be within that course that they can access through the learning management system. It just simplifies things a lot for them and allows you to track things better. Khan Academy is another great hybrid where they have lesson plans, you can play the video in person or live online, or they can do things self-paced and you can track their work. Other IXL, GED Academy, there's a lot of different models like that out there now, but again, Khan Academy being free, you can't beat it. And the other free resource that I would give for hybrid blended is Remind. A lot of students are giving feedback, and even teachers, that they would prefer more text-based communication, especially for, say, meeting reminders or things like that, or deadlines. So Remind allows you to have that kind of text-based communication, but it's secure. And so you're not having to give out your personal cell phone. For in-person, Chromebooks have really won the hardware war when it comes to education because of their cost effectiveness in terms of one-to-one devices. I know for quite a while, iPad was really trying to make a good showing, and some folks are still using tablets, but Chromebooks definitely, especially in K-12, have just kind of taken over. But tablets with Square, for those of you who have workforce development built into what you're doing, Square is just one, again, of many Shopify and other point of sale systems. But what's great about them is you can set it up. Again, a lot of these have kind of free levels where you can set up a model store for them, where they can be practicing the skills they would use in a retail store, in a restaurant, even doing customer service over the phone with people. Headphones for in-person, mandatory. Otherwise, everybody's got some noise going on. And then another interesting in-person with tech that we're seeing more and more of is 3D printing with Tinkercad. So if you haven't used Tinkercad before, it is, again, another free tool that's done by Autodesk. So AutoCAD is one of the most commonly used computer-aided design systems for manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. So, but Tinkercad is a really kid-friendly or beginning language learner, or just anybody who wants to do free tools. I mean, I do know some folks who only use Tinkercad. There's a business here that does cake pops, and they actually design their cake pops in Tinkercad and then 3D print the candy, the outline of the coverings, all out of Tinkercad, and have brought it into schools to teach kids. It's a former teacher. So lots of really fun projects you can do for in-person. So you can, if you do have a 3D printer with it, that's fantastic. But even without a 3D printer, kids really have a lot of fun with the ability to test out their engineering and design skills. So having gone through some of those tech ideas model by model, are there other, the other thing I would say too about HyFlex is when it comes to technology, the needs are very similar, but it's just combining your needs for both distance and hybrid or blended. So the real big difference with HyFlex is not so much that it's a different type of technology that you're going to need, but really that you're going to have to design your program for multiple types of access with the same group, because they are going to have that choice if they come to class in person, if they're going to be watching online. So, you know, I could be teaching an in-person workshop, you could be watching on Zoom, and that's recorded, and the folks who are watching that recording later are also going to be able to interact with it in some way. So that's where those collaboration tools that anyone can access at any time is really useful. So any questions so far about those models and their connected technology? Or any resources that you would like to share that you have used with your program model? All right, so some additional resources, again, since some of you said you are interested in having a different balance of technology and program models than what you are currently using. There's two resources I would share with you. Both of them do come out of adult education, but for those of you working in K-12, I'm sure there's a lot of this stuff is really just about educational technology generally. So hopefully they'll also be applicable. There's in links, there's a Distance Education and Blended Learning Handbook, now in its 8th edition. They talk about technology-based coaching, text messaging, contextualized video lessons. So integrated education and training, whatever program model you're trying to implement, I'm sure they have a resource here for you, except except hybrid. So I'm going to put this link in here for those follow-up resources. And then this is the HyFlex guide that I generally recommend. So Ideal Consortium and the Ed Tech Center at World Education that helped put this together also do whole professional development sessions on the HyFlex model and implementing it. So feel free to share. All right, so now thinking about our program models, what is the difference with our strategic goals? In this next part, I'm going to talk just very briefly about each of these because, again, technology is going to vary a lot based on your specific goal. But digital equity is, just to define these terms for us, is really about meeting learners' needs in terms of access. And we have at least one person here who's already started receiving some of these digital equity funds. The digital equity funds that are currently coming down the pipeline, I'll talk a little more specifically about in a minute, but are really to support home-based broadband in an affordable way, and also literacy to give people the skills to be able to maintain their own networks at home and to prepare for jobs related to that broadband access. Digital literacy can be focused specifically on that broadband, or it can be any sort of digital literacy. So it can be design-based like Tinkercad. It can be workforce specific, such as tracking systems for truck drivers, any sort of digital literacy skills. And I'll share in a minute some resources around those. And then accessibility, again, just to define what we mean there is talking about our assistive technology. So whether we're in person, online, recorded online, hybrid, there are ways that we can be using technology to help our learners who may struggle in different ways to access some of the materials. So I have one example here and more on the slides, but for digital equity, when thinking about HyFlex is very much related to digital equity. One of the reasons that people have been advocating for the development of this model is because the struggles that our adult learners have, HyFlex giving them that option from day to day helps them maintain their attendance and persistence towards their goals. So just one example of a hardware resource that you might need for that kind of model is, say, a lavalier microphone. Because if you are trying to teach in person and online at the same time, or if that is being recorded, and sometimes you can do a headset as well, but if you're doing, like I said, HyFlex where you're in person and online, wearing the whole headphone thing is kind of funny. But a lavalier mic is one tech, and other types of recording software that will help increase the production level. Other things to think about in terms of technology is security, making sure that our students, especially if they are buying the more affordable versions of technology, like we know iPhone is practically unhackable, but if you're buying an Asus laptop so that you can access things in class, there are free antivirus software out there that they could be using, or low cost. Video conferencing tools, again, just like we're doing right now, everybody's using Zoom, right? But again, not everybody. So depending on what system you're using, you may have to be paying for that at the program level to make sure your students have that access. One example of purchasing technology specifically for the purpose of digital equity comes out of higher education. This is the University of Kentucky. And I'm not going to go through this entire model, but I did want to at least give you some of the pictures so you can kind of see this in action. So some of the things that they're offering students is not only laptops, tablets, and mobile hotspots as part of that access, but they're also designing spaces such that like they can have, whoops. So looks all our libraries are doing this all the time, right? But having spaces that are easy for collaboration. And where's our other photo? So they're really just designing spaces where students can collaborate, not only in their common spaces, so they have a place to come and work on their own, but also in the classroom, having furniture that's mobile, all of that to make it a more accessible environment. Another thing to think about with this digital equity funding, I don't know if any of you have met Midi Jordan, who is doing Brookdale Orchards in the Huff neighborhood. But one of her reflections, I mean, she's also in the business, as we are, of getting people into jobs, giving them jobs through the orchard, using it as a job training platform, using it as an educational tool for children as well as adults. But she has also been critical about some of these programs that will deluge us with funding for a short period of time, but then when that funding dries up, that support is gone. And her memorable quote on this is, "They got jobs, we got programs." So as we're designing our programs, thinking through how we can do this in a sustainable way. We know the tech is going to advance quickly. So how can we make sure that we are helping our students to not only use those skills in a technical way, but also do troubleshooting? So I'll share some troubleshooting resources and kind of lifelong learning resources for you in a minute. But really, I believe that the most important post-pandemic technology is not anything that we are buying for us. The most important when it comes to our students being able to access K-12, being able to access jobs, is their own home internet and understanding how to use and protect and not be scammed through their own devices. So that's my big, if there's nothing else that you take out of today, this is really my big take-home point, that this is about giving our students the skills, but also giving them things that they can take home with them, quite literally, to be able to continue to have access. So that brings us right to digital literacy. And for those of you with the digital literacy program, feel free to put your curriculum in chat if you would like. But two that I recommend are GCF Global, which used to be GCF Learn Free. So if you go to GCF Learn Free, you will get to this site, and here's the link. So they do have, for your English language learners, they have things. There's a lot of workforce development, but this is their, this is really where I go to, and talking about cookies, man. So, and if I were with students right now, I would have stopped right there and talked through, what does this cookie thing mean? You know, that is a great teaching moment as you go to a site to show them something like, how are you managing these cookies? How are you dealing with some of these security concerns? But uh, I really love GCF Global. It's developed by the Goodwill Foundation. It was developed initially for their own workforce development programs, and their foundation decided this was something they wanted to make available to everyone. And they do a really great job of staying up to date and making sure that there are tutorials that are really going to be topical for what folks need now, but also it's a great lifelong learning resource because, you know, in the future, when Office updates, when emails change, when there's changes to Windows, anything like that, when these new systems come out, GCF Global is going to help us develop something that's going to have easy to learn tutorials. Of course, each of those programs have their own tutorials around that, but I just really like, not only can they access those videos and practice problems at any time, but as an instructor, you can actually set up classes and be tracking what your students are doing in GCF Global. And my screen went blank. The next one I would recommend is North Star Digital Literacy. Again, this is for your adults. If you are working with, like, say, teens, or there's also the Microsoft Office, all of those things. But there is a lot of programs already around, and perhaps some of yours that are already using North Star. And it's kind of a freemium model where folks can go in and do these tutorials or even do the assessment at any time for free to help them build the basic digital literacy standards. Basic computer skills, this is really great for our digital equity. Essential software skills, which is great for our career tech or helping with collaborative learning. And then our using technology in daily life. So that's the free, is the student access, but programs, their business model, the way they're able to sustain it is by being able to offer proctored exams on site. And this is a very affordable way to become a test center. And a lot of folks are not only test centers, but also are offering the curriculum. So that's what, with some of the pricing, you can do it as a single location. You can do it as a regional location. And based on how many learners you're serving, how many locations you'd be providing assessments at. And then this optional implementation consulting, if you do go with North Star, there are a lot of programs that are using this for grant funding as a before and after, pre and post test, to be able to demonstrate gains in digital literacy. And but there are also a lot of programs that I've encountered where it's been they've needed some help implementing how that actually goes into their flow in their program. So they do some consulting, and that's again another level of cost, but a very useful support, technical support. So before I move on to accessibility, any questions so far about what we've talked about, or anything you wanted to hear more about, more resources around a particular area when it comes to digital equity or digital literacy? I'm going to check in the chat. We're good?
Nothing in chat. You're good.
Great. Thank you. All right. So for accessibility, this is a big portion of some of the digital equity funds, but also accessibility is really it's going to be often a lot more about software than it is going to be about hardware. But being able to have either built into the system, teaching your students what's already built into their systems in terms of accessibility. We do get anywhere from children through adult, any age. We get folks who are hard of hearing, are low sight, are going to have need color changes. Let's go topic. We used to do before this came, the ability came to do color changing on the computers and everything kind of moved over to computer-based testing about 10 years ago. We did a lot of colored overlays with students, and we're just amazed with how the change of color of the paper, that black on white for some folks is just absolutely brain splitting. So these are some of the accessibility issues that, students may not even know why they struggled so much until you test out some different options for them. And of course, there are two levels in terms of accessibility for technology to think about. One is the adaptations. Adaptations are things that are available for anybody. Things like closed captioning, things like voice to text that are fairly standard, but it's just a matter of educating about how to access them, how to use them properly, and also when you're going from device to device, where those options are. Translations are also, it can be a hit or miss when it comes to some of the automatic translations, but we're seeing even in Microsoft Teams where people could have a meeting and request captions to that meeting in the language that the meeting is in, or request captions translated into a different language. And those captions, again, can it be hit or miss when it's kind of auto-generated? Yes. If you are creating videos and other types of resources for your students, you can assist with that by being intentional about the captions, or having descriptive text around photos, things like that. But these things are getting better and better and better as AI and these big language models are really learning how these languages work. And I think we mentioned under digital equity how flexible furniture can make a really big difference in terms of encouraging collaboration and providing space for students who may not have other spaces to study or to do their work. But also, flexible furniture has a big deal, is really important with accessibility and for folks with different mobility needs. My son actually is one of those kids where he, it's been a long process of figuring out, what's the best. He just cannot sit still. He doesn't sit still for long periods of time, and not just as a little kid, it's just something that being able to adapt in terms of furniture and give him space where he can move without also disrupting other children in a group setting has been a journey of self-discovery. And it's actually been quite helped us really value what he brings. So Another example, a local example in Oberlin, Allen Memorial Art Museum currently has an exhibit specifically around accessibility, and they in particular are using 3D printing, and they're using scanning 3D scans of their pieces to be able to bring these pieces to life for folks, especially who are blind or have different levels of visibility issues. So it's a very interesting way to bring things to life. The possibilities with 3D printing when it comes to giving our students access to tools, you know, there's so many things that we can have available for them that used to be ridiculous to buy, and now you can print it. So if you have a chance to go back into our Google Doc, feel free to take some time to reflect on these questions for yourself in your program. And I'm going to reshare that link here into chat.
Megan,
Yes.
make sure when you're resharing the link, you're resharing it to everyone, because there's a couple that are just host and panelists. I've been looking at, but
got it.
yeah, it went default on me to host and panelist before.
Got it. Thank you. Talk about accessibility. So here again is that Google Doc. And another accessibility thing that, and I don't know if you can actually see this little pop-up because it's not part of the window, but even just being able to teach people how to go into night mode, how to use their Zoom features, just makes a huge difference. I find even for myself as, you know, natural aging with eyes, I do a lot of Zoom on screens. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit now about these emerging funding opportunities. It sounds like we have at least one program who is taking advantage of some of this digital equity funding, but I do want to stop and just make sure we're kind of all on the same page about what's coming down the pipeline. And again, if you do want to share a little bit about how your program has prepared for this. But if you want to go even deeper, there is a YouTube video here which it talks about some of the more specifics of what I will be going over a little more briefly. And there's actually a lot of really great webinars to get into the nitty-gritty of how this is going to work. But the Digital Equity Act of 2021 had three main focuses that any nonprofit can help take advantage of depending on the audience that you're serving. So the three areas of focus for the Digital Equity Act is providing digital skills and training, improving online accessibility, and empowering rural communities. So again, this determines a little bit on your location and on your audience. Accessibility, again, we were just talking about, but specifically, it's not just accessibility. In education, it's also accessibility of social services for individuals with disabilities. Part of this can be also educating ourselves about what it is that different folks need based on their differing strengths and abilities. But the Digital Equity Act is not an official, it's actually not an official website of the Digital Equity Act, but it is a resource. I think it kind of honestly explains things sometimes a little better than the government site, but to give you a look at the government site as well. This $2.75 billion is being chunked into 3 pots. We've already started and are far along on the first one here, the State Digital Equity Planning Grant. So here in Ohio, we had a public comment period for that in 2023. There's a digital equity capacity building grant. Again, this is more at the state level, but they can sub-grant. So depending on which state organizations like Aspire that you may be affiliated with, I do know there are some folks who are WIOA funded who the entire state is gearing up for all programs to have some level of involvement with this capacity building. But the thing we really, as local nonprofits, should be aware of is the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. So this is for 5 years to implement digital equity projects. One of the great benefits for those of you in the city of Cleveland is a Digital C. So they are actually offering internet service, and they're not only offering internet service at an affordable rate, but also they are working on some infrastructure issues around access. There, disruptions that happen due to overcoming the tree canopy, those sort of things. So a real systemic approach to access. For those of you who are in more rural communities, there's also, again, that whole pot of funding specifically for the challenges of broadband in rural areas as well. So in the competitive grant for the Digital Equity Act, some of the funded literacy activities, and I actually have a few more that are funded but not specifically through that grant, but funded literacy activities are supporting broadband adoption for education and employment. So with this expansion of broadband, this means a lot more jobs. And so the state is motivated to fund programs that are helping assist with preparing either high school or college or non-traditional adult learners get into these jobs. And there are, again, some specific audiences. There's, for example, Alaskan Native or, different populations, but especially focusing on English language learners, people with disabilities, to be prioritized in these programs. And of course, all of us are serving those populations to different extents. So there is, as we mentioned earlier, digital literacy specifically around broadband adoption, but there's also funding for more general digital literacy training and workforce development. Some that are outside of the Digital Equity Grant that we have here in Ohio. I'm starting to have a lot of tabs open, so I'm just going to close them. Okay. So IMAP are individual micro-credential assistance programs. So this is a kind of an employer-driven training program, but it allows training providers to work with employers to train them for specific micro-credentials that are eligible to their industry. So if you do have partners in the workforce that are looking for specific credentials, that is one outlet, especially for our adult programs. Tech Cred is also a section of that. Similar model. And then if you are providing literacy development, but you're not connected with a specific sector yet, there are industry sector partnership grants. So this is specifically for making those connections between us as training programs, between K-12 education, and between businesses, so that we are bringing those businesses into our programs, and also we are having more communication with them so that the work that we're doing around literacy is contextualized to the world that they're going to end up in. Another area of funding is public access computing centers. So we do know that our libraries, of course, are a big asset around that. However, there are, because of these funds, a lot of nonprofits that are not who you would traditionally think of as computing centers, who are using this to help implement that kind of program, like senior centers, like I've even seen with preschools where if they are developing a room that their families, obviously it has to be public access, so it's not going to be, behind the closed doors, but having something that's a public access room where folks can access computers as a benefit for the parents and family members as they're coming in and out to have a place to work. And then, of course, equipment for that broadband. So Digital C may be providing the affordable broadband on a week-to-week basis or on a month-to-month basis, but our programs being able to provide equipment for students. I know there have been a lot of programs that will do a digital literacy program, and as an incentive for folks to finish at the end, this is what you get to take home, is this specific equipment that you've learned how to use. So if you're looking for more information about these key sources of funding, there's Broadband Ohio. I do know we had a person or two register from outside Ohio who may be watching this later. So if you are outside of Ohio, look for your state's broadband department. We also have the Office of Workforce Transformation Initiatives, which again have a very interesting range of who they're targeting, not only adults, but high school, middle school, even family literacy programs, programs to engage parents in their children's education, etc. And then here in Northeast Ohio, the Cleveland Foundation is the contact for the Regional Digital Inclusion Alliance. So what the Ohio statewide plan for digital equity did is develop a system of regional digital inclusion alliances. So there's a different one for each section, and they we'll see exactly when the RFPs come out how this is worded, but the speculation has been that they will be that these regional groups are going to be then the ones that are kind of helping convene, make decisions, and then decide how things are going to be distributed. So if you haven't already reached out to these folks at Cleveland Foundation and want to get involved in some of those initiatives, please talk to them. So again, I know I've had an emphasis a lot on the importance of industry partnerships, but if there's, again, like a second point that you take away, point number one is that when it comes to technology, the most important technology is what our students take home to own for themselves. But secondly, that digital equity really requires working hand in hand with other organizations that can help us better serve our students, whether it's connecting them to business. There's the Cleveland Site Center for accessibility. There are a lot of different programs that can be funded, but the funding is coming through collaboration and is being aimed for things that will put a lot of different organizations working on similar goals together. So let's say everything goes fantastic. You've secured your funding. You've figured out what the tech is going to be in your program. You've purchased it. It shows up. Then what? Before it ever gets to your students, your staff is going to need training. So we have all had this kind of Ron Swanson moment where we've discovered something on the internet and just wanted to throw out the entire machine. Unfortunately, that doesn't get rid of things that are on the internet. However, training and technical support is really going to be a core of is going to make or break the success of our technology implementation. So some of this might be for instructors reflecting on, for myself, what technical support do I need to pursue to make sure that I'm ready for what's coming down the pipeline, but also for our administrators. What training and technical support will your staff need? So I have two things related to IBM to show you. One is IBM skills build. So if you do have students or yourself who are interested in going further in the field of technology, there are IBM Skills Build is they really have made an investment. This is similar to what the GCF Goodwill Foundation has done, where IBM said, you know, we have these great internal tech training programs, but we need to start sooner. We need to start younger. We need to have things be more accessible to people that aren't already in our working pipeline. How do we make this more available to the community to have a more diverse workforce that is coming to us prepared? So that is the impetus behind IBM Skills Build. And we can get involved with this as at an individual level as a learner, as educators, and as organizations. So there are a lot of different pathways that you can take folks through, and they have teacher toolkits, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to dive too far into it as we demo. But I also want to share a story from inside IBM. My dad worked for IBM for 30 years. His dad worked for IBM for 40 years. And both of them had so much training. IBM is one of the absolute leaders when it comes to professional development in terms of internal training, not only beginning training, but also ongoing training as their technology advances. They're not the ones who are in the forefront of the news on AI, but because of their work with Watson, they are light years ahead of some of these other tech companies, even in terms of being able to capitalize on this market. But that means training their own internal staff. So, but their commitment, my dad estimated there were most years he spent 10 to 15% of his time in training. And so we have to think about for ourselves, like what percentage as administrators or as we are writing grants, how much of this digital literacy and training and technical support for people with disabilities or for English language learners, etc., speakers of other languages, how much of that can be targeted not only to the broader community that we're serving, but also to ourselves, to our own staff and our own administration. There is nothing precluding you in these grants, as far as I know, from building in that kind of training, again, not only for out there, but making sure that first our own staff are prepared to teach the technology that we are going to be, the equipment and curriculum that we're going to be given through these opportunities. All right. So this has been a whirlwind, and I think I have talked a lot faster than than I anticipated. But let's take a pause here to share a little bit about your evaluation of programs. So at this point, I was going to, depending on how many folks, I mean, we always knew this was going to be a smaller group being targeted for administrators rather than instructors, and happy to have instructors along as well. But I was going to do breakout rooms at this point, but I wonder if maybe we could do it in the large group, but maybe I could stop the recording so you feel a little more comfortable sharing. But at this point, I really thought it would be very valuable to hear a little bit more from you and for you to share with each other what has been successful. What are some of the challenges that you've had? Are there certain things that you would tell people beware of? We did this and it really didn't work. When it comes to the software that you're using, the hardware, curriculum vendors that you've worked with, open educational resources. So we do, again, have this Google Doc that you can share, but I may, Lori, if you don't mind, well, I'll say a little bit of the end stuff first, because I don't want to like turn it off and turn it back on, but then I'm going to stop it and allow us time to really talk to each other and network and share without being recorded. Okay, so just real quick about what's going to happen after the session. So first, you're going to get a post-session survey. We appreciate your evaluation and feedback, as we are always improving. You are also going to get an email with a certificate for attendance from a system called Badger. So that will serve as your certificate of attendance if you need to demonstrate that, but also it will be a shareable digital badge that you can add to LinkedIn or other social platforms. And then you will be able to follow up with me if you prefer to do one-on-one email or schedule a phone call or a video conference if you want to talk a little bit more about your specific situation and how you might implement some of the resources and ideas and funding that we talked about today. So Here's what the digital badge will look like from Badger. And my contact information is at mustseed.org, MUSTSEED. And my email address is learn@mustseed.org.